AI is here to stay. So, how can we innovate in a way that matters to educators and students? This episode is all about shedding some light on AI in the classroom. Through our guest's lens of ethics, philosophy, and design thinking, we'll explore the latest big ideas of AI in education and provide some actionable and practical takeaways. Welcome to Teach and Learn, a podcast for curious educators brought to you by D2L.
Each week, we'll meet some of the sharpest minds in the K-20 space. Sharpen your pencils, class is about to begin.
I am thrilled to introduce an authority and thought leader in the artificial intelligence and education space. He's an international keynote speaker, best-selling author, podcast host, and I am a loyal listener to his podcast, and an award-winning digital and educational strategist who works with schools, colleges, and businesses across the globe. Welcome to Teach and Learn, the AI educator, Dan Fitzpatrick. So happy to have you here.
Thank you for having me, Emma. It's great to be with you and to connect with you across the Atlantic. I'm here in the northeast of England, so if my accent doesn't sound like a traditional English accent, that's because it tends to be a bit harsher the more north you get.
Love it. Well, we have we're a global company. We have welcome all voices from across the globe. So happy that you're here. And like I said, I first found you on LinkedIn and have been an avid now follower of your work. So when I said to our team, I really want to try to have a conversation with Dan. So it's always great when this comes full circle. So thanks again for agreeing to be with us today and to have a little chat. Before we move into AI and education, though, I'm big on understanding people's origin stories and, sort of how you got to where you are now. So from what I understand, one day you're a high school teacher. I'm a former high school English teacher. So love that connection that we have. But what happened? What sort of inspired you to take a pivot and lead you down this career path?
I was a high school teacher, and I think I always tried to. I was one of these people, and I think I've been this out in my whole life, where I've always kind of been a bit of a rebel. Like, I've always wanted to go, right, okay, this is how we're doing it, but can we do it another way? Is there a better way? Is there a way that's going to make more sense? And I suppose always kind of been in the pursuit of innovation, and no matter what I've done, really. So that started off from a very grassroots way. I remember when I was training to be a teacher, of coming across Google Drive, and even just that, thinking, my goodness, why isn't everybody in the organization using this? It would mean we could share our content easily with our students, and so kind of pursued a route of educational technology at first, and especially kind of cloud technology, and trying to, I suppose, for want of a better term, to evangelize the teachers around me, and try to get us to work smarter and harder, and try to get us to kind of think, well, how else can we do this? How can we do this better? And that kind of always took me down paths where I would always be doing projects outside of my job. So working with ed tech companies, started a podcast years ago called Edgy Futurists, with two great guys, Ben and Steve, also from the north of England, who are still doing it, still going strong. And then, I guess I always wanted to write a book, and I always had ideas with friends, sat down, planned them out, and just never got round to doing them, really, and always admired those who could do it. And I suppose I was working, I'd moved, so I'd become a leader in secondary education here in the UK, and then moved into college education, because I was really passionate about technology, and there's just not the money in secondary education in the UK to really go deep with technology and experiment with it and so on. So I moved into college education, where there's a bit more funding, and was working on digital strategy for a large group of colleges. And it's where I first came across artificial intelligence in its current guise, I guess, or as generative artificial intelligence. And that meant when ChatGPT came out, I wasn't entirely surprised. I played around with earlier versions, and so straight away thought, this can help us. I know it can help us because I've been trying this, and and I suppose, yeah, I just started sharing resources and got really passionate about, again, going back to kind of the roots of who I am. I got really passionate about wanting to evangelize people and go, right, look, have you seen this? Have you seen how cool this tool is? How it can help you time? And then I suppose those early first few weeks after ChatGPT came out, there wasn't many educators doing that. So I quickly found myself in demand very quickly for people wanting to know more, people asking, "Are you doing webinars?" and so on. And so I decided to write a book, which was the AI Classroom, um, which came out in March 2023. And yeah, my life's kind of been a crazy whirlwind since then. It's been
Yeah.
amazing. It's been and like you said, I get to go around and talk to people around the world about this. I get to work with administration teams, leadership teams, and strategically integrate this. I get to write books. I write for Forbes now on AI and education. So yeah, that's kind of what's happened the last couple of years, anyway.
I love that. And we'll get to the books because I want to dive in on sort of the differences among the books that you have out, as well as you talked about the Forbes pieces. But I'm sort of chuckling. I can't imagine just if you were excited about Google Drive, imagine how mind blowing Gen
Yeah,
AI has been, right? So,
absolutely.
but I
Yeah,
love, finding those little pockets of where the innovation is happening, right?
yeah, and to be honest, I think some people still need told about Google Drive. I think a lot of
Yeah,
people
yeah,
still
yeah,
need. And we're going back over 15 years or so there. So it's kind of, yeah, we've. I think when you step back and look at that journey,
Mhm.
this is happening really fast, and
Yes,
then that kind of then brings out in me the strategic side of, well, how do we prepare for this? And I always frame things um, within what's called the three box solution to innovation. It's by a guy called Vijay Govindarajan, and I talked about this in my new book. And I the whole idea, and I realized I kind of live my life by this as well, which sounds really sad. It's a business strategy, but I love it because it's about three boxes. It's about going, right, well, what are you doing currently? What's working for you? What successes are you trying to achieve? And what systems have you got in place? What processes have you got? And then it recognizes that there's, even though that might seem really stable and it might be working really well, that one day it might fall apart. It might not. It might become irrelevant. It might. So I suppose if a school might look and go, right, actually, is this the way education's always going to be? It hasn't always been like this, and also the world
yeah,
around us is changing so fast. So chances are it's probably not going to always be like it now. So do we start to prepare for that? And I suppose you could take that into your own life as well and go, well, this is my day job, this is what I'm doing. But actually, if you want to, I mean, you might get laid off the next week. You might be made redundant. You might, God forbid, have an accident. Like, have you got anything else you're working on? Any innovation in your life that you can build for yourself? I suppose. So I've always kind of lived like that, and now this is kind of the root of the innovation strategy I use with schools and businesses now, and going, well, how do we move from box one to box three, when box three is all about creating the future, creating something new, putting resources and time and effort into building something else. And then the middle box two, is what might you have to let go of
oh,
in order to go from box one to box three. So yeah, that's kind of, it seems to be the framing of my life, and how I try to help school leaders understand innovation at the moment. But I think it helps.
yeah, for sure. So do you consider that sort of framework to be your greater vision for this work, to provide some type of um, schema or mental model for people to navigate these murky waters?
Yeah, I think so. And I think, because for me, that is strategy. And I know
Yeah,
strategy has kind of become a buzzword and it can mean so many things.
right.
And I think what most people, judging by what I see on LinkedIn and in reading in books and so on, I think most people, when they say strategy, they mean a plan. They mean, well, this is, and I suppose you can have a strategic plan, but that plan must be linked to a strategy, and a plan isn't a strategy. I think a strategy is something like that box three solution. of going, right, well, here's where we are, this is where we want to be, and what is the route to get there. And then the next level down is you go, right, well, what's the current plan? And I often think about this. My dad, when I was younger, whenever I was faced with a challenge, I remember he always used to say to me, and by the way, I always used to think this was a thing. And as I got older, I started to say this to people, and they're like, what? I've never heard that before. When your parents say things to you as you're growing up, and you just think it's a normal thing, and then you start verbalizing it, and you realize, no, it was just your parents. So what my dad used to say to me, if you ever come up against a challenge, if you ever come up against like a wall, like you need to get over, and it looks impossible to get over, he said, well, take your hat off and throw it over the wall. And he said, then if you want your hat back, you've got no choice but to find a way over the wall. And for me, that is strategy. That is the three-box solution in action, because you go, right, this is where we are, and now we need to go, right, where do we want to be? Now, the route there might change. We might come up with a lovely plan, sit down in a boardroom, we all chip into it, we get AI to help us, we turn it into a PDF, we've got a roadmap, we've got everything, all of this lovely stuff. It goes on the school website or whatever. But actually, this time next month or this time next year, that plan might not work anymore, because the technology's gone really fast, because some government regulations just come in, which means we can't go down that route anymore. The technology isn't going as fast as we expected, and so on. So the plan can adapt. Just like I can start climbing over that wall and go, actually, I'm not going to get over the wall going this way. This is not going to work. So I need to climb back down and try another route. The strategy is exactly the same, but I've got the flexibility to try and figure out different ways to and acknowledge that I might be failing and go back to square one and so on. So that's what, yeah, I think as a simple strategic framework, I think it works really well. For me, it addresses a lot of what we need to do. We need, because it's not about just jumping from box one to box three. It's about, I think good leadership holds both in harmony. So because you can't just give up everything you're doing now, because then you'll not have a business or a school or a life to come back to. you
Right.
need to you need to manage that, but while managing that, you need to balance, I think, weaving the future and trying to figure out this future of how we're going to get over the wall, uh, and then bringing everyone with us and figuring out what might we have to give up in order to get there. um, yeah, so I think I love it. I think it's very. I think I like it because it's simple, and then I think simple ideas travel, and I'm a simple person, so it's great for me as well.
Yeah, well, I think, when we talk about, and I want to get to sort of the multidisciplinary approach that you've taken with a lot of this work also. But as I hear you talking about letting things go and creating that schema, whether you're a school leader, a classroom teacher, the notion sort of transcends your position in the system as well, which I think is also welcome, because as you've mentioned, with the fast, rapid pace of these changes, when I think about, as a former classroom teacher, my day to day plus this meta world around me of this ever changing technological landscape, certainly appreciate having that three box sort of mindset to think through. We take this day by day, and yes, there's a greater strategy, but there's more to it than that.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
I would love to hear, some of we're going to get into some of the practical pieces, but, you have this really interesting multidisciplinary lens that you bring to this work. And so can you talk a little bit about how you've seen educators in particular? So I know there's the school leader piece, but those who are sort of working with this day in, day out, like how have they been adapting? Have they been, are they struggling? Like, what is the reality of what you're seeing with the
yeah.
current landscape of AI in education?
Absolutely, and I think, again, to put it in that framework, I think we on the ground, our teachers and our educators on the ground, I think we're operating in box one, so we're doing what we know how to do. We know what we've been trained to do, what we how the current systems, the current success rates and metrics, and so on. And innovation happens in that box. Like
Yeah.
innovate, but it's kind of a linear innovation. It's about going, right, well, where do I need to get to? So the framework, the system isn't changing, but can I get there faster? Can I get there more efficiently? And I think this is where we're seeing AI plug in quite easily at the moment into kind of the day-to-day practices of a teacher.
Yeah.
It's going, and you see it in the marketing activities of edtech products. You see it in case studies, the people saying, teachers saying, well, this is saving me 3 hours worth of time a week, and so on. And I think that's where the benefits are coming from at the moment. It's allowing teachers to get some time back because of the I suppose the ease of resource creation, the ease of being able to ask an AI for ideas and bounce ideas off it and come do some idea generation, the ability to be able to even just basic admin things like write reports, write emails. I think this is where this it's kind of the low hanging fruit. I think when it comes to artificial intelligence, but we need it. We educators need it. Um, we we've seen a crisis now, and I'm lucky enough to I get to work in education systems around the world, and pretty much every education system apart from Finland at the moment has gone through exactly the same troubles in terms of lack of finance, lack of staff, staff retention, and
Yeah.
so on. So
Burnout.
it's yeah, exactly,
Yeah.
yeah. So I think my goodness, we need it. Um, I think that it's a mixed bag. I think I probably live in a bubble when it comes to this stuff because
Yeah.
I get asked to go into the schools who want to learn about it. I get asked to go into the schools where they are already starting to develop their skills. Um, but I think what we're seeing at the moment is for the most part we're seeing individuals using AI. There's still a lot of lack of training out there. There was a study done by Twinkle about a month ago. I think it said 74%, and this is in the United States and in the UK. Uh,
Hmm.
74% said they hadn't received any sufficient training in artificial intelligence. I mean, that's a quarter that have, which I suppose is a good sign. But I think what we're seeing at the minute is just individual users. So I
Sure.
suppose those innovators, teachers who are into ed tech, who like ed tech, or whose a friend has shown them, or they might have a spouse who works in AI or uses AI and has showed them some things. Um, and I think that's what we're seeing at the moment. And I suppose it's the early days, isn't it? It's how a new technology starts to infiltrate a society, in that we start getting those first users. With some schools starting to go off ahead, those that have got,
Sure.
mainly in my experience, private independent schools who've got a bit more resource, got a bit more um, cash to spend, and teacher time on their hands, that are kind of pushing down the line. Um, but yeah, I think we're still in the early days there.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Well, and I'm hearing also as you're describing those individual use cases and it's similar to what I'm hearing in the field, whether you're talking higher education or our K-12 educators around those who are sort of tinkering. We just, are working through some research right now through the Online Learning Consortium, and this has come out on the student side as well around tinkering or using it as a way to kind of save time and create efficiency. So I think that's a common thread. What I'm curious about, though, as we're thinking about the tension of maybe some of the historic educational systems that we have in place being a barrier to really scaling this work, especially as I think about what learners are going to need in the future related to these skills. So, what is that tipping point? I mean, where are you? And what's the vision of how we get there? I get the training side of it, but as you're having these, doing these keynotes and people are inviting you in, how do we, move from that sort of not one-off, it's more than a one-off, but those individual use cases to really thinking about this from a systematic sort of design perspective?
Yeah, and I think there's kind of two camps here, and that is the first one, um, and it comes back to it all comes back to the three boxes for me, but it kind of comes back to that first box in that I am seeing a lot of more traditional schools in the UK. We got a lot more traditional style schools, heavily influenced by a lot of educational philosophy coming out in the United States over the last 20 years, in terms of teach like a champion and so on, and
Mm-hmm.
taking almost teaching practices and distilling them down into the essence, and then trying to replicate them to get results. And I think And I worked in high schools that were like that, and that focused really, really strongly on getting students the best grades that they possibly could get, because that's how they could help with social mobility
Mm,
in terms of making sure students had the best opportunities. I think by doing that, I think we've missed the other side of the coin. And I think that comes back to what you were saying in terms of preparing students for afterwards. It's interesting. I'm just taking out some new life insurance because I'm moving house soon, and the insurance company sent a nurse around to my house this morning to do like a medical thing for the insurance, and she does this work on um like on the side, and her main job is she's a nurse and lecturer at a local university. And so we were talking about AI in my living room, and she was saying she teaches new nurses lectures at a university for new nurses, and she was saying they they're learning the information, but they have very little um, communication skills,
mm,
interpersonal skills, the ability to work closely with another human being, and I think I remember when I was in secondary schools years ago. I remember local, because I used to look after careers education as one of my leadership jobs, and I remember local business people saying something similar. And so I believe that this isn't something that is just appeared because of AI. I think this is something that I think the education system as a whole has been struggling with for a while now, and that is, how do we make sure that we're not just filling minds with information, but we're helping to form healthy, competent human beings. Because, okay, we might be giving them the grade to get that interview or giving them the grade to get into university. However, once they're there on day two, they don't have any skills to be able to then to and
yeah,
that's a broad sweeping statement. I know it is,
sure.
but I think some of the educational system has neglected that side of things, and I think AI does actually shine a bit of a light on it now, because if the core of education, or if your whole core of philosophy of education has been to get information into the minds of people, well, we now live in a world with advanced computers that can think intellectually, and if they're probably quite close now already, and within the next couple of years, I imagine, will surpass us at that ability. Now, when I say that, I'm not saying that we shouldn't learn anything because the computers know everything. Of course, we still need to learn. We need to build skills. We need to, but I think we need to start to look at, well, what could we pull back? Why does 6 hours a day, constantly every single day, have to be about learn this information now, learning that information, learn that information? Why can't we pull back and look at some of the more wider skills, some of the more what we call softer skills, I guess. And I think some of that will be how to use artificial intelligence. And I
Yeah,
I often say to people, if I was employing someone and I had two people, one of them was uh, straight A student, perfectly like the most academic student, great grades, and I had somebody who was a C student, but knew how to use AI really well. I'm going with the C student every day, every single day, because what they're able to do in terms of collaborating with artificial intelligence, and how much more there'll be to do just by default as the AI gets better, is
yeah,
going to be much more than just this other human being that is just learn things, and try to pack as much learning as possible. Now, and I think it's a state of where we're at the minute. Like when I talk like this, I think some people, I've been on panels at conferences and said similar things. Um, some people take offence, or they get
yeah. They
quite
probably get
quite
nervous, right?
yeah. Oh, and some people go, oh well, you're just trying to throw out knowledge in in favor of skills, and then you get the skills versus knowledge argument. You get the traditional versus progressive argument, and actually, it's a straw man argument. Oh, I I understand pedagogy. I've trained in it. I know that we need knowledge. I know that knowledge is the building blocks to skills. I know all of that. But what I'm not saying is, what I am saying, sorry, is don't just focus on that. And I think it's going to be interesting, I think, because I think we're going to see a lot more schools, and we're going to see a lot more kind of startup schools. Like the fastest growing school in the UK at the moment is an online school, a company that was just formed during COVID, and it's essentially a business that started this guy. I know the guy really well, a guy called Hugh, started a school and has grown it from strength to strength. And I think we're going to start seeing other educational entrepreneurs thinking, actually, why don't we make this type of school or this type of school? And I think there's going to be a lot more choice for parents, choice for students going forward. And I think it's going to be an interesting time. I think I say in my new book, I think we'll probably see the decentralization of education. A bit like, like we're seeing that phenomena in finance. We're seeing it. There's a big push in medical care at the moment for decentralization. I think we'll start to see it in education, and I suppose you don't need to tell me with I suppose you guys in the United States, trying not to get political here, but you guys in the United States are kind of, I suppose, with what your political system at the minute is doing with the federal Department for Education, you might be there a lot sooner because of the political situation. Not saying that's a good thing or bad thing, because I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing, to be honest. But I think it's probably the phenomenon that we're going to see, and therefore state schools and regular schools, I guess, for want of a better term, are going to start seeing more competition, I think.
Yeah.
I think
You're talking about different choice around the innovation piece too. We'll continue this conversation with Dan Fitzpatrick, the AI educator, on the next episode of Teach and Learn. Until then, remember to look for us on social media. You can find us on X, Instagram, LinkedIn, or Facebook at D2L, and subscribe to the D2L YouTube channel. You can also sign up for the Teaching and Learning Studio email list for the latest updates on new episodes, articles, and masterclasses. And if you like what you heard, remember to rate, review, and share this episode. And remember to subscribe so you never miss a thing. Bye for now.
You've been listening to Teach and Learn, a podcast for curious educators brought to you by D2L.
To learn more about our K-12 and corporate solutions, visit D2L.com. Visit the Teaching and Learning Studio for more material for educators by educators, including masterclasses, articles, and interviews.
And remember to hit that subscribe button. And please take a moment to rate, review, and share the podcast. Thanks for joining us. Until next time, school's out.